Other than tolls and traffic, and I don't know how much you would have seen beyond where you went with wrestling, but what are your thoughts on New England? Do you like New England at all?
Well, from the outhouse to the penthouse and back. There are parts of New England. Stace and I years ago went to Provincetown, Massachusetts. It's right out there on the tip of the Cape. And you've got water on like three sides of you. It's a beautiful drive down the scenic highways and byways from the city. And we stayed at the Land's End Inn. It's an old house on top of a hill that you can see out just the water everywhere. And it's very beautiful, little bed and breakfast thing. I don't recall them giving us breakfast, but we slept late. And they had great restaurants, and it's, the old-time fishing village type of vibe, and it's a tourist place and very cool, and art studios and different things like that. Love that kind of New England. Never been there in the wintertime, probably would change my attitude. I understand they get snow up to your crotch on a good day. But Boston can suck a worm. Fuck. Talk about New York being crowded and traffic, and you've been to Boston, obviously. You're up there in that area.
I like Boston.
Dude, what the fuck? The traffic and the roads and the construction and the confusion and everything's built on top of everything else because they got no more room to spread out because they're on the water. And when we were on the way to the Boston Garden one time, and there was a parking lot on each side of a road that was underneath bridges that was a highway on top of that, running past and underneath a goddamn building. They just built shit all over the top of everything up there because there's not enough room in downtown Boston to whip a cat in without getting fur in your mouth. It's tight. My claustrophobia kicks in. Do not like the New England cities. They're too small to be that big.
You're not a fan of cities in general, and I'm curious, based on the most recent visit you've had to any of the major cities, what is the one you mind the least, and what is the one you hate the most? New York, Philly, Boston, Atlanta? I guess those are the big four I could think of that you've been to.
Well, wait a minute. You just recently. New York, Philly, Boston, Atlanta. One of these things is not like
Chicago.
The other.
No, that you've been to in the last 10 years that I can think of.
I thought you were talking about the Northeast.
No.
No, I love
major
Baltimore.
Cities I'm talking.
I love Baltimore. Baltimore is the only place I've gone in the last 15 years in the way of staying in a city to go there for a pleasure trip. Sabatino's, Little Italy, I think they may have closed it now, but we were there and saw it, the Geppi's Entertainment Museum with all the classic comic books and things, the restaurants in general, the Inner Harbor. Love Baltimore. Hate every other fucking city I can think of. North or south, actually. If you're downtown, you can't tell the difference. It all looks the same. You're smelling exhaust. You're looking at concrete. You're hearing noise. You're seeing people. And it's too fucking crowded.
If there's one you have to drive in, what do you pick? Philly, Boston, or New York?
Oh, Jesus H. Christ. Probably Philly just because it's the lesser of three evils. I've refused to ever drive in New York City again, and I haven't been to Boston in a long time, and probably ain't gonna break that string anytime soon. I'll tell you what, and I had a anxiety attack. Providence, Rhode Island, of all places. I thought Providence was just a little place, but I went up to the oh God, what was the name? It was a comic and wrestling con fan fest thing, and I can't remember the exact name of it. It's been 6-7 years ago now. And they put us up in this beautiful inside high-rise hotel right in the middle of downtown Providence. But between the street construction and the fact that I'm downtown anyway, and I'm trying to drive by myself and see these fucking signs, I circled around this hotel 6 times before I could figure out how to get into it, and getting lost in the road construction. And then had to park in the parking garage and go up to my room on like the 18th floor. And it was one of those deals where you have to give your keys to the parking people. So I had anxiety for 3 days because I'm sitting in my room, which is 20 floors above this fucking city, all I can see is concrete and buildings. I'm not only 20 floors up, but a couple of blocks away from my vehicle that I do not have the keys to, and I couldn't see a fucking tree. I don't know whether my asshole unpuckered enough to take a shit till I got out of there. Not comfy in those places, in those situations.
What is, and maybe surprisingly so, what is the best major city? What is the major city you're like, oh my God, traffic's fine. This is fine. I feel safe. Any city you could think of?
Well, I used to love Charlotte when I lived there, but now you go there and it's like going to goddamn Philadelphia.
Now it's a major city. It wasn't a major city yet.
Well, no, it was a major city in the South. It was just under control. And
under control.
And traffic wasn't bad, and you could see trees everywhere, and there was space, to breathe, oxygen. Fuck no, it looks more like Atlanta now.
What percentage of the Mid-Atlantic wrestlers lived in Charlotte? When you were there, at least.
98. I mean, somebody may have lived in, we lived in Pineville, which was kind of a suburb, and then they changed the address without us moving, and it became Charlotte. Somebody else may have lived in Matthews, or Nelson Royal lived up in, was it Concord? Or where is Western Store was? Mooresville. But no, everybody lived in Charlotte. Because, I mean, it was not only geographically the center of the territory when you drove everywhere, but it was the major airport when Crockett started expanding, and it was where the office was. You had to be there every Wednesday to shoot promos anyway. So, yeah, everybody lived in Charlotte. That was working there regularly. If somebody came in for a date or two, I mean, when Ole worked for Crockett, he didn't move back to Charlotte from, I think he was in Atlanta then, but, he knew he wasn't going to make a career out of it at that point. He had lived in Charlotte many years previous.
All right, and this has been Jim Cornette on cities. Who are you trying to
track down? Who are you looking for?
No, I'm just curious, when you think about Mid-Atlantic wrestling at that point, how many of the guys would have wanted to live as close to Charlotte as possible? Was it a necessary thing you had to do because of the travel and the central location?
Well, no, you could have lived in fucking Rock Hill, South Carolina, and everybody would point at you as soon as you went outside your house because, Rock Hill's a small town and everybody knew who everybody was, or you could kind of get lost in Charlotte every once in a while if you wanted to go to the grocery, put a hat on, whatever. But there were usually all the guys in any of the territories lived in the same place because it was easier to hook up for rides, and that was kind of established as the central location. In Louisiana, it got to be different because normally, before we got there, the guys lived in Baton Rouge because everybody wanted to go out to a bar or be in a bigger city or, more girls around or whatever. But that meant that the guys that lived in Baton Rouge, when you went to Oklahoma, Arkansas, you're away from home for 2 days, make the one shot. Alexandria, Louisiana is where the guys started moving when we started going there because since Watts had expanded into Oklahoma and then he'd picked up Houston, it was more centrally located, and Shreveport was where we did TV and promos every week, and it was closer to that. But then you lived in Alexandria, Louisiana, and that was the most, bumfuck town in the history of towns. And everybody, you couldn't go out in public because everybody knew who we were. The heels couldn't go really anywhere except, when Doc or Hercules Hernandez were heels, they'd go to the fucking Lighthouse, a.k.a. the Fight House, because they didn't give a shit. But if you just wanted to be unmolested on your way to fucking Kroger, Alexandria was not the place to be, so the guys had their wives or girlfriends do the grocery shopping. But we never spent any time in our homes anyway, because we were always in the car, so that shortened the car trip. But there were like 2 movie theaters that you couldn't go to because you didn't have time, you didn't want to get recognized, and 1 shopping mall that you couldn't go to because you didn't have time and you didn't want to get recognized.